Hey guys, I just wanted to say a quick thing before I get on with the video. I was out of commission there for a few days. I just had surgery. If you're curious to know anything about it, I share a little bit on my TikTok, which is linked in the description box below. I'm not going to talk about it here. And I have some family staying over to help right now, and so my office is kind of being taken over. So you're like kind of in my bedroom, which is kind of like in progress still because we moved a couple months ago. But this is like the space that I could get to. So sorry about like the quality. It's not the best quality right now. Also sorry if I sound kind of crappy. It's because I'm recovering from surgery, so just bear with me. But I had this video ready to go up, and so I really wanted to just record it and put it out there, so have mercy. This story is absolutely disturbing. We send our kids to school trusting that teachers caring for them are good, that they're qualified, and that they've been vetted before being hired. But Andrew James McGann was an elementary teacher whose intentions were sinister. And a question I have is, were the red flags just missed, or were they buried? This is Criminality, and I'm your host, Brittany. So just a reminder, everything discussed in this video is alleged, and Andrew is innocent until proven guilty. All of the information discussed has been pulled from public sources with some of my own personal opinions, of course, sprinkled in. All right, so Andrew James McGann is a 28-year-old former elementary teacher who taught 3rd and 5th grade and is being charged in the murder of the married couple, 43-year-old Clinton David Brink and 41-year-old Cristen Amanda Brink. So it was July 26th when Clinton and Cristen took their 2 daughters, ages 7 and 9, for a hike at Devil's Den State Park in Washington County, Arkansas. And it said in reports that in a random attack, McGann stabbed the husband and father, Clinton. And in this moment, it's believed that Cristen ran their daughters to safety, ushering them away from McGann, and sent them to get help. And once Cristen felt that the girls were safe, far enough from harm, Cristen actually returned to the scene to try and save her husband. And tragically, Cristen was also killed. Now this just breaks my heart because as a mom and a wife, I can kind of imagine what she must have been thinking in that moment. I absolutely love my kids more than anything in the whole world, and I know that my first instinct would be to also protect my children. But once I knew that my kids were safe, I can't imagine not trying to return for my husband. We've been together for 15 years. He's my best friend and my person, and I just can't imagine the torment that she was feeling in these moments and hoping that she could just go back and save him. I told my husband about this story and how I would also want to come back for him, and he told me, God forbid that we were ever in a situation that I better not come back for him. He even told me so much to put that in the video, but I'm sure it's easier said than done when you're in that moment. I honestly don't know how I would respond. You know, who is to say exactly how anyone would respond in that moment? You think you know, but no one does, and God willing, I hope none of us ever know how we would respond in something like this. But by 2:30 p.m. that same day, so this was July 26th, a 911 call was placed reporting the assault, and shortly after that, both Clinton and Cristen were found deceased. Their children were also discovered nearby. They were safe, but clearly traumatized. My God, I can't even imagine those poor babies. They lost both their dad and their mom in this most horrific way, and now they have to navigate through this trauma without either parent to help them. Now, by that same evening, a manhunt ensued, and by the following day, they released this image and this sketch of the suspect. So he was described as a white male in his late 20s, last seen wearing rolled up long sleeves, gloves, and carrying a black backpack. And then, just a couple days later, on Wednesday, July 30th, McGann himself was arrested at a barbershop in Springdale, Arkansas, for the murder of both Clinton and Cristen. And though, of course, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, authorities have reported that McGann's DNA was discovered at the scene. Items were recovered in his home that were consistent with the crime. And during an interview with investigators, McGann did actually admit to committing the murders. And so with everything there, it does look like they got the right guy. And now perhaps the biggest question is why? Why would a teacher do such a horrific crime and randomly murder 2 parents in front of their young children? Well, I did do some digging on McGann, and I do have a theory. So like I said, McGann was horrifyingly an elementary teacher, and in just a few years, he had moved around quite a bit, state to state, job to job, which in itself is a red flag. I'm also married to a teacher, and I can tell you that this is not normal behavior, just bouncing around from school to school, state to state. So in 2022 to 2023, McGann taught at Donald Elementary in Flower Mound, Texas. And in a very scary turn of events, parents in Flower Mound have come forward and said that they had actually reported concerns over McGann's behavior in the classroom before he resigned in 2023. And so the details that have come out about his time teaching there are extremely disturbing. So reports of McGann giving extra attention to certain female students, bringing them treats, being touchy with them, tickling them, keeping some of the girls in from recess, and then when the students would return, sometimes those female students would actually be sitting on McGann's lap. So many boundaries were being crossed. And then one child even heard McGann tell a young girl that, quote, "If you were older, I would love to marry you."
Well, we first met him in 2022 when the fall semester started. It was his first year teaching, like solo, having his own classroom. And it was at Donald Elementary, and he was my son's 4th grade teacher. He taught his homeroom teacher. He had like science, math, and a few other subjects. The first time we met him was at Meet the Teacher. And he was an interesting character. He was uncomfortable, very standoffish, cold, wouldn't make eye contact. You could ask him a question, he'd give you a one-word reply. But I'll be honest, I just thought he was young and a new teacher, and I was like, it's awkward, that's okay. It wasn't until the school year kicked up that there would be incidents in the classes, and then eventually my son started coming home from school just really depressed and glum. And one day I just kept pushing and pushing, and he broke down crying and told me that he had seen some things in the class, and other classmates had too, that just made him really uncomfortable, but that he was scared to get anyone in trouble. I was terrified because, he wouldn't just come right out with it at first. And so I was like, what do you mean uncomfortable? Like, tell me. And I pushed, and that's when he eventually told me that him and some other classmates had noticed that Mr. McGann was very touchy, and showed a lot of favoritism to certain girls in the class, and that when they would go out for recess, sometimes he would choose one of those girls to stay behind, just one-on-one, him in the classroom, while everyone went outside, and that when they'd come back from recess, he would sometimes have the little girl in his lap. And around the same time, he would bring like treats and goodies and stuff, but just for these little girls. And I think the straw that finally, made my son just like snap and spill it all was that he had heard Mr. McGann tell one of the little girls, "If you were older, I would love to marry you." And that just made him deeply uncomfortable, because even at 9, he recognized, like, this is weird, this is weird behavior from a teacher. The very first thing I did the next morning was take it to the principal at Donald. They have a new principal now, but the principal at the time, I took it to her. And I made sure to get a list of names of other students who had witnessed this, as well as some of the names of the little girls who were being singled out. And I did. I took it to the principal. I'm not gonna lie, I felt she was kind of dismissive about it. But she did say they would investigate it, and there was an investigation. They put out a statement a few days later saying that they found he had managed his class poorly, and so he was given the option to resign with no consequence, and he was allowed to go on teaching in other districts.
Absolutely disgusting, repulsive. Clearly a total predator, and as a mom, I would be pounding down doors if I ever found out a teacher was acting this way with my children. I mean, I'd be making a scene for any kid, but as a mom, the thought of this, it literally makes my blood boil. So after these reports were made, McGann was placed on administrative leave in spring of 2023, and he later resigned, though the school district actually said, quote, "Their internal investigation found no evidence of inappropriate behavior with its students." And this to me is total bullshit. If there are reports being made of child abuse or concern for child abuse, I think that this should be turned over to the police department immediately. More people should be looking into these types of claims, not just like an internal investigation with the school district only. No, we need more eyes. I will say I've actually seen things like this firsthand, not with claims of like possible predatory behavior, but I have seen instances where there were concerns for a teacher drinking alcohol on the job, and to avoid public scrutiny, they actually gave the teacher the option to silently resign instead of formally dismissing him from his position. I've also seen something similar in healthcare at a facility that I worked at. Claims were made against an employee for inappropriate behaviors, and because the hospital didn't want to deal with an investigation, they gave that employee the option to quietly resign. And so these quiet resignations, one, they allow the employer to avoid dealing with an investigation, of that employee and the potential consequences like bad press, public scrutiny, just the mess itself of dealing with an investigation. And so to cover their own butts, they tell the employee to resign instead. But obviously, there are repercussions to this. Now, that deviant employee gets to avoid having anything on their record, so future employers have no knowledge of their criminal behavior. And ultimately, these persons can continue to offend. They could just hop around, offending, and then quietly resigning. And that bullshit needs to stop. Now, I'm not implying that what McGann did to Clinton and Cristen is the school's fault. McGann is an evil person, and these are his actions, allegedly. But you can't help but to wonder what would have happened if the district turned these reports over to the police department, or at the very least fired him instead of allowing him to resign so he had something on record. I have just one more thing to say about this, and then we're going to get back into the details of the case. But so schools use a zero tolerance policy in regards to bullying, meaning that there is a, quote, set of rules that require specific predetermined punishment for every infraction without any exceptions, without any leniency. So no deviation from the rules is acceptable, and disciplinary action is immediate. We need this type of zero tolerance policy for teachers as well. Any reported criminal behavior should be required to be reported to the police, and no more internal investigations only. We need outside sources checking in, and then obviously, if any person is found guilty, not only do they receive charges, but then obviously they're not allowed around schools again. Zero tolerance for any of this BS when it comes to teachers. When it comes to children, they are the most vulnerable population, and they deserve to be the most protected. Okay, so back to the case with McGann. He quietly resigns from Donald Elementary in the spring of 2023 after accusations of his inappropriate behaviors with the kids. And then guess what? McGann went on to teach somewhere else because there's nothing on his record. This time in Oklahoma for the Broken Arrow Public Schools at Spring Creek Elementary. McGann went on to teach 5th grade there from 2023 to 2024 before, quote, resigning from there as well. Broken Arrow Public Schools did put out a statement. They said, quote, McGann was a 5th grade teacher at Spring Creek during the 2023-24 school year and voluntarily resigned at the end of the year to pursue employment elsewhere. We can confirm there were no disciplinary actions taken against him during his time at Broken Arrow Public Schools. As with all district employees, McGann underwent and passed all legally required national background checks, both for Broken Arrow Public Schools and the Oklahoma State Department, prior to being hired. So after that, McGann got another teaching position, this time as a 5th grade teacher at Northwoods Fine Arts Academy in Sand Springs, just 30 miles away from Spring Creek. And he taught there from 2024 to 2025 before making his move to Arkansas. A spokesperson for Sand Springs Public Schools shared this statement, quote, Andrew McGann was employed at Sand Spring Public Schools from the summer of 24 to May 2025. At the end of the 2024-25 school year, McGann resigned his position to move out of state. The safety of our students and staff is our highest priority. Every employee undergoes a mandatory background check for the district when they are hired. Additionally, each teacher undergoes a background check for the Oklahoma State Department of Education. McGann passed all background checks. And then just before the murders of Clinton and Cristen, McGann was hired again at a school in Arkansas, Springdale Public Schools, but he actually hadn't started teaching yet, and so he never really had any interactions there with the students or staff. But that's 4 teaching positions in 3 different states in a matter of 3 to 4 years. So talk about red flag after red flag with this man. He is a predator and was just walking amongst society, amongst children, at least 5 days a week. It's terrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. The most recent update is that McGann is being held in an Arkansas jail for 2 counts of capital murder, and he's being held without bond. His next court appearance is set for August 25th. And now I said earlier on that I have a theory, and that's all it is. Of course, it's just a theory, but I thought I would share with you what I'm thinking about this. So based on McGann's predatory behaviors leading up to this and the ages that Clinton and Kristen's daughters were, both 9 and 7, very similar to the ages that he was teaching, I wonder if he maybe wanted to abduct both girls or one of the girls. Maybe he attacked the dad and was planning to end the dad and mom quickly and take the girls. The dad fought back, allowing the mom and girls to escape. Or maybe the girls were just like a little distance ahead from the parents, while they're hiking and they're playing. And maybe he attempted to take one or both of the girls again, and the dad fought back. Like I said, these are just theories, but I imagine that he might have been trying to get to one of the daughters and the parents died protecting their children. We may never know the exact details, but I think that the parents died heroes, and I think that they saved their daughters. I also wonder, with him bouncing around from state to state, if there are any other unsolved crimes or any unsolved murders that need to be looked into that maybe will tie back to Andrew McGann. I think it's something to legitimately look into. You'll have to let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But other than that, I wish you guys all the best. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of content, and stay curious. Bye, guys.